was curious to hear both Rabbi Glatt and Dr. Glatt what you think about the vaccination distribution, like the priority list. What are your thoughts on that? Who should really get it first, second?
So both of those two guys have talked about this ad nauseum. I was on a Zoom Saturday night with probably now close to 5,000 people that have listened to it, about 2,000 or 3,000 live. I was on a Zoom last night with 600 people. I gave medical grand rounds in our hospital on this subject last Wednesday. So this is a very, very hot and important subject. So both the rabbi and the doctor agree that this is the greatest gift that God could have given to us to get us out of this epidemic. And that I took the vaccine already. I'm blessed to be on the front lines, so I'm eligible for it. Now, you asked me specifically about the criteria to roll it out. So the Advisory Committee on Immunization Practices, which is a group of stellar scientists, not necessarily of any specific background in terms of religion, ethnicity, or anything else. They're just a stellar group of scientists, have come out with a recommendation as to ethically how we should be giving out the vaccine. And I would say that it's a pretty sound system. From Jewish law says the government has the right to make up any fair and equitable system, even though Jewish law might have done it differently. So when I discussed this exact question with the greatest sages of our time, they all said that what I had suspected, that might not have been the exact system that Jewish law came up with, but it's a perfectly reasonable and acceptable system. It should be followed, and jumping the line is not allowed. Will tell you that my own hierarchy would have been slightly different based upon my medical expertise and my religious expertise. And I personally would have given out the vaccine first to the same exact groups that they did, with the one exception that I would not have given it out to people who had COVID. The official CDC recommendation is that we ignore prior COVID in the distribution of the vaccine, and that we recommend that anybody more than 90 days after their COVID should get the vaccine. And my personal medical as well as religious law interpretation would be that those people aren't in the highest risk group. While I would recommend that if we had no shortage of vaccine, of course they should get it. But if I had in front of me one dose of vaccine, and I had in front of me an ICU nurse who had COVID and an ICU nurse who didn't have COVID, I would say absolutely give it to the ICU nurse who did not have COVID, because they're at much higher risk of getting COVID. Now, the ICU nurse who had COVID, we do have examples in cases of second COVID. And there is a theoretical risk that that person could transmit even if they stay asymptomatic. So I'm not saying you don't give it to the ICU nurse who had COVID, but when you have a choice, Jewish law says that in this situation, you should give it to the higher risk person, which the advisory committee gave that general guideline as well. But I think my own personal opinion is that I would have chosen not to give COVID positive people who had COVID in the past or have antibodies, the vaccine in the first tranche. I would not have given it to them. I would have given it to them in the third, fourth, fifth tranche, but I would have given it to the older people first, who were the most at risk. I would have given it to every frontline healthcare worker who didn't have antibodies in the first group, and then to the older people and the highest risk medical patients in the second group. So that's how I would have rolled it out. That's what I think the halacha says should have been done. And when I discussed it with some great rabbis, they agree with my viewpoint. However, I respect and understand, and we have carried out in the hospital our vaccination. We follow the CDC guidelines and not what I would have put into place as the Jewish law guidelines, because the CDC guidelines are appropriate according to Jewish law, because they're the government's vaccine. It's not my vaccine. The government's vaccine, and the government has the right to distribute it as long as it's doing it in a fair way. If they said Jews can't get it, they're only allowed to give it to non-Jews, so that would be an unfair way of distributing it, and then we wouldn't be obligated to follow it. And it would be, again, wrong to follow it and not give it out to Jewish people.